The good thing about accessibility is that it's fairly easy to sort of pick one piece of software and teach about it, and then use those skills in other software. So the stuff I'm going to talk about, I'm showing you specifically how to do it in Canvas, because I really like the Canvas accessibility checker. But whether you're creating headings in a Canvas page or whether you're doing it in a course assignment schedule, it's going to apply in all of these places, even though a website seems like it's different from like a document. It's all going to be the same kind of thing. So I guess I'll start by introducing myself, just to give you a little bit background as to why I'm doing this part of this seminar. My background is I graduated from Western with a degree in English and German. I was going to be a teacher. I was going to teach college, and then I got sidetracked by this whole falling in love with technology thing. So I run a whole bunch of workshops on Canvas and video lectures and accessibility. And part of that is being on the Universal Design Committee, which is where I sort of started to learn about this whole accessibility and education kind of a thing. By getting a little bit better at software, you can help more people. You can reach more people and make their jobs less frustrating and sometimes less impossible to access learning content on the web. I only have this job because of learning content on the web. I took a MOOC, a massive open online course, Intro to Computer Science from Harvard, and that set me off on my path to switching careers right out of college. Harvard recently, I believe, lost a lawsuit that says that they have to make those exact MOOCs, including the one that I took, they have to make them accessible to all people. So I would not have this job if I had a disability that prevented me from accessing that online course. So I'm very fortunate in that sense, but I'm hoping that in the future it won't be a matter of whether I'm fortunate enough. It'll be a matter of, we know how to make online content accessible, and it's just part of our process. So it's something that I'm really passionate about. And again, I think that you can make your own document and website creation processes faster and less of a headache. And the tools are only getting better. This is kind of a baby field. It's still developing. It's kind of a wild west in terms of accessible technology. So lots of great updates are to come, I believe. And yeah, so let's dive right in. I'm going to well, let's start and talk a little bit about what are headings. So headings are the titles of pages, and you want to not just make headings big and bold. Students who are blind are going to rely on screen readers, and screen readers are blind as well. They need code that lives under the hood of your document and under the hood of your website to know the difference between a title and just plain paragraph. So we want to, when we're creating titles for our document, we want to make sure that we're using proper headings and that we're nesting them like this image shows. So I've got heading 4 nested inside of 3, 3s are inside of 2, 2s are inside of 1, and it should basically create like a table of contents for your page. Canvas makes this pretty easy. So I have this sample class that I've started. I have this page here called Week 1 To Do. So this would be something that you might show students at the beginning of the week. We've got a nice picture of Valley, we've got the topic overview, learning objectives, and we've got stuff to do this week. Now you'll notice that this isn't quite as pretty as the way that I would normally do it, and that is because this page is wholly inaccessible to someone who is using a screen reader. So if I go to next, let me show you, this is kind of what that same page would look like if you were using a screen reader. You can see the difference. There's no image. There's no way to know what this image was supposed to be. Everything is, this looks like terms and conditions, which the greatest lie ever told was, yes, I have read and accept the terms and conditions. So that's what that's what your page looks like, quote unquote, to someone who is using a screen reader if you don't use proper formatting tools. So without further ado, I'm going to jump right in here and show you how to make this formatted properly for someone who's using a screen reader. Now, people who might use a screen reader would be people with blindness or low vision, and someone who also has a motor disability, who can't use a mouse and they can't use their hands very well. They may use a screen reader as well, because it not only reads the page, but it helps them control their computer from the keyboard. So I'm on a Canvas page, and I'm going to come up here and hit edit. And everything that we're going to be doing today, for the most part, is inside of this fancy text box. Canvas calls this the rich content editor, and that's just a term I want you to know because Canvas is going to throw it around a lot, and I want you to be not confused when you hear that in the future. So rich content editor, or RCE for short. Okay, so this rich content editor comes with a lot of cool things. I'm going to give myself some more real estate on the page. And one of those things is the ability to add headings. Now, if you watch the 10-minute video series on how to do this in Microsoft Word, you'll know that you would be looking for the styles pane. In Canvas, you want to look for this paragraph drop down. Okay, so this is the opposite of a title is a paragraph, if you want to think of it that way. So most stuff in here is going to be considered quote unquote paragraph until you tell Canvas otherwise, that no, this is not a paragraph, this is a title, or this is a heading. So what I'm going to do is you can just click, or you can physically highlight everything that you want to be a title, and we're going to come up here to paragraph. And I'm going to start at the top and work my way down. So heading 2, and there you go. It did not change the style at all. All it did is change this to heading 2, and now this down here is paragraph. So now the code under the hood of my document is going to tell people this is a header and this is paragraph. Heading 1 is this up here. Your page or your document title should be heading level 1, and you should only have one heading level 1 in your entire document, unless you have like a really long document with sort of different sections maybe. So the next one I'm going to do is, because we're nesting, I'm going to click down here, and I'm going to change that to heading 3, because heading 3s go inside my heading 2s, and I have another heading 3 because these two are on the same level. These two are both heading 3s. If you use Chrome and you can download extensions, I highly recommend using this headings map tool, because if I hit save, I can show you. If you need an easy sort of visual way to test the headings on your page, you can just open it up, and there you go. We've got one, which stands for heading 1, week 1 to fix, heading 2, week 1 topic overview, and then we've got inside of that 2 heading 3s, which is learning objectives this week, to do this week. So this should form like a nice outline or a table of contents that describes everything in your page. And just from looking at this real quick, I know that I have appropriately applied my headings on this page. This is kind of like using the navigation pane in Microsoft Word, but it works on your browser, so that's really handy. Yeah.
That's not automatically available to us, and we have to download something in order to get that navigation to work?
Yep. If you want to take advantage of that, that is a third-party tool that someone has just built. You'll find that with a lot of accessibility, like I said, I hinted at earlier, web accessibility specifically is still a field in the making. Accessible technology is light years behind everyone else. Now, it is getting better in a large part because of lots of lawsuits. People are kind of demanding, like, hey, we've realized that the World Wide Web is kind of a non-optional public accommodation. The ADA considers websites for businesses to be places of public accommodation every bit as much as the actual physical building. Domino's recently, within the last year or so, tried to say that, well, if you can come to the building, you don't need to use our website, and the courts ruled that that's not acceptable. So websites are places of public accommodation, and the technology is just now starting to catch up because of that. But so everything that you're used to, you're used to a lot of accessibility or a lot of tools just kind of being built into things. You may find that you might have to download something to help you out here. Now, that said, the Canvas Accessibility Checker, like I said in the announcement, is better than anything I have seen so far. And I was actually surprised at how good it is. It's not going to catch everything. I don't think an accessibility checker could ever catch anything, no matter how good it is. And that's just the same way that I don't think any piece of technology could actually physically teach your class for you and give students the same benefit of your human knowledge and your human communication skills and your human critical thinking. Accessibility is the same way. The technology can get really good, but I think you may still have to go looking for some extra tools to help you out. And that's why I'm going to try and kind of point the way towards the ones that I find the most useful. A year from now, you may not even need these tools because Canvas might improve the checker or a better tool might come out. So like I said, this is a developing field. So hyperlinks, if I am using a screen reader, I have the ability to bring up a list of all of the links on the page. That's really handy because if I'm using a screen reader and I'm blind, I can't use my mouse, right? I can't see the screen, so I don't know where to point and click. And that means that everything on the page, rather than being separated into sort of regions, I have a left-hand region for this blue navigation region, and then I've got a course navigation region over here. I have it sort of separated out by region. But if you're using a screen reader, everything is linear. It's all start to finish, top to bottom, and you don't get the benefit of this visual layout. So I can bring up a list of all the links on the page, and that's probably going to be the main way that I navigate around Canvas, just period. It's just going to be a list of every clickable hyperlink on the page in alphabetical order. So it is very difficult when I come up across a link like this. So I would literally hit this link and I would hear https://www.pewresearch.org/2019/04/110/share of you get the point. It's really not human readable. It's not going to tell me where this is taking me, and honestly, it's just kind of a pain to listen to. People who use screen readers don't like listening to the voice of the screen reader any more than the rest of us do. We actually have a student worker named Talia Tevis, and she is amazing, and she is blind, and she helps us. She actually did the accessibility testing that helped us determine how much more accessible Canvas is from everything else. So credit where credit is due. I would not know nearly as much about accessibility without her help. What we're going to do is we're going to swap out this terrible link, which, let's be honest too, this just doesn't look great, right? Like, this just doesn't look very neat. It doesn't look polished. So I think the rest of your students are also going to thank you if you can turn this into a nice, neat link that tells them exactly where they're going to go when they click on it. So I'm actually going to take this URL and I'm going to copy it. And I'm actually going to delete this. Well, first, let's head out to that website and see where this takes me. So I open it in a new tab, the website that this is going to take me to. I kind of stumbled across this article on accident. It doesn't mean anything. And so share of US adults using social media. So let's say I'm doing this article about social media. What I want to do is type out where the link is going to take me. Let's copy this. And then I'm going to paste that in here. Now, if I just paste, it's going to paste the style as well. I'm going to undo that. In Chrome, if you right-click and say paste as plain text, I don't know how many of you remember Lynn, who used to work in the FSC, would teach you how to copy and paste into Notepad, because that would create plain text. This saves you a step. In Chrome, perhaps in Firefox as well, you can right-click and say paste as plain text, or Control-Shift-V, and it will just paste the content without any of that extra styling code that we don't want in there. Okay, so we have the name of our link, and this is going to describe for students exactly where it's taking them when they click on it. But now we need to actually make it a link. To do that, I'm going to highlight it, and I'm going to click on this link to URL button up here. And now I'm just going to paste that long jargony URL, not jargony, gibberishy URL. So I'm going to come up here, I'm going to copy that URL, and I'm going to paste that in there. And now we have a beautiful link that actually, when I hear this out of context, share a view as adults using social media, including Facebook, is mostly unchanged since 2018. If I wanted to, I could even say like article, you know, just to be extra helpful, or I could put that in parentheses at the end. Without the context now, it makes total sense where I'm going if I click on this, and that is going to help even your sighted students as well, because it's going to be more clear what you're actually asking them to do by clicking on this link. Now, if you're linking to something inside of Canvas, it's even easier. So let's say that I have this post to week 1 discussion. So what I can do here is I tried to link to Canvas itself so that people could click on this and go right to the discussion they're supposed to post in. But the easier way to do this is just to get rid of all of that. And I can come over here and I can say, I'm linking to a discussion, but I also have pages, assignments, quizzes, announcements, modules, and course navigation. I'm going to come here to discussions, and I'm just going to click where I want this link to go. And then I'm going to click on the discussion that I want, and boom, it's going to create a nice, neat link inside of my page for me that is not going to break when I copy my course over to next semester. So that's the important reason to use these links. It's super handy. The other thing we want to avoid with links is read more or click here. Again, the links are going to be pulled out of context, so they're just going to be a big old list. And what the student's going to get is a big old list that just has click here, click here, click here, click here, read more, read more, read more. And it's, again, that's not telling the student where they're going to go when they click on it. So descriptive links, but short, you know, and brief as you can make them. Okay. So the accessibility checker, this is something I'm really excited about. So you can access it from this. This is sort of the accessibility, the web accessibility symbol. I believe that Apple sort of first redesigned this logo. And that's going to guide you through a bunch of stuff. So if you click on this, when you get the PowerPoint, how to use the accessibility checker as an instructor, it'll tell you everything that it checks for. I'm not going to demonstrate everything today, but I'm just going to show you a few common things. So on this page that I've purposefully set up to not be accessible, I'm going to, now on mine, it's like I have to scroll for it, so be aware of that. You might have to scroll this little bar for it. I'm going to, again, close this sidebar to give myself some more real estate on the page. But this accessibility checker link right here is going to pop up a side panel for me. Okay, so here's my accessibility checker, and it's going to take me through, I've got 4 issues that it's going to walk me through right now. The first is that the image file names should not be used as the alt attribute. So if I am blind or visually impaired and using a screen reader, obviously I can't see images, so I need some kind of textual representation. I need all of these images to be written out so that I know what I can't see, essentially. Now, you don't have to repeat any content that's in the text around it. So if I had like a picture of George Washington crossing the Delaware, and then I had a paragraph below describing what was in the painting and like what it's about for all students to see, I don't then need to describe the painting in the alt text, because then the student has to listen to it twice, right? They have to listen to it as alt text, and then they come down here and they read the paragraph, and they get the same information. So unlike links, alt text is not taken out of context. You want to consider everything on the page around the image when you're deciding what to describe in this image. In the same way that if I can see the picture, I'm seeing the picture on the page, so I don't need to see the same information twice. Okay, so in this case, I'm just going to put in my alt text right here. There is a spot to enter alt text when you embed this image in the first place, but you can also correct things directly from the accessibility checker in Canvas. That is a really unique feature. A lot of accessibility checkers don't actually help you fix the problem. The Canvas accessibility checker does, which is super great. So I'm actually going to put my alt text right in here and say, sign for Kalamazoo Valley Community College. I would say that that's probably, for something like this, it's not super important that they know every little detail of the image. And this is, again, where you want to consider context. So I could describe that there is a bush over here. I could describe that the sign is standing outside of the college. I could describe that it's blue, although there's debate from different people who were blind from birth versus went blind later in life might prefer or not prefer color. At which point you might say, well, then what do I do? And to which I would answer, your best. There's no making every student happy, and that's why I say, there's no such thing as 100% accessibility to everyone. It's all based on different students having different needs. So I'm going to change for this. In this case, I'm just going to say sign for Kalamazoo Valley Community College, because for this page, the rest of that extra information isn't going to make any kind of educational difference. I'm going to hit apply, and that is going to apply my alt text, and it's going to automatically move on to the next issue. So in this case, the next one is lists should be formatted as lists. So what that means is that I've got some lists here, 1 and 2, and I've got these little dashes creating these lists, but I did not use the bullet and the numbered list tools up here, as you can see. So you want to make sure that you are not just creating lists from scratch. This includes in Microsoft Word, although Word will convert them for you if you try. The list tools up here, bullets and numbered, it adds code under the hood that indicates this is a list. And so the student can actually hit the L key on their keyboard and jump to the next list on the page, which is really nice. They can hit, when we were talking about headings, they can hit the H key and jump to the next heading on the page. In this case, all I have to do, what I could do is highlight this and then click on the appropriate list button, but the accessibility checker is going to fix it for me, which is super, super nice. So all I'm going to do is check this box and hit apply. And boom, it has fixed my entire list for me. So now I'm going to do this one down here. Notice it made this one a numbered list. This one is going to be just a bullet list. So I'm going to say, yep, please format that as a list for me, and apply. And boom, it has turned that into a bullet list, which is super awesome for it to do for me. And here we go. We have a clean bill of health from the accessibility checker. Now, this is not going to catch things like, hey, you don't have any headings on the page. It's not going to catch, hey, you repeated, you wrote maybe unhelpful alternative text. There's a lot of things here that it can't catch. One thing it didn't catch that I expected it to, and that might be because this text is actually big enough. Let's try that again. Okay, so another issue is color contrast. I guess the text when it was a title was large enough that the color red was fine, but for text that is this size, that color red is actually not contrasting enough from the background. So for someone with low vision, it may pose difficulty to read. Now, Canvas does have a high contrast mode that the student can actually turn on for themselves and then see everything with higher contrast. And by contrast, what I mean is dark text on a light background or light text on a dark background. If you've been at Valley for a little while, you may or may not have noticed that KVCC blue has changed. Within the last few years, even since I've been here, KVCC Blue used to be a little bit lighter than it was, and we have completely rechanged all our branding and logos and website to be this slightly darker blue, and that is simply because the old KVCC Blue with white text on it was too low of contrast. It did not meet contrast requirements. And there's a mathematical formula that determines what is good contrast. And that's what this checker is testing for. So in this case, that red, which was just straight up fire engine red, actually is not enough contrast when the text is kind of normal sized. So what this is telling me over here is that I should fix this to make the text darker on this light background. What I can do is I can actually just drag this thing around, and notice that when it's too light, this button goes gray. I can't click on it. But when I darken it up just by dragging this down a little bit, it's now going to let me apply that change. So I can even get that right on the edge if I want to. There we go. That is about as close to my original color as I can possibly get. I can hit apply, and now I have a slightly darker red that's going to show up just a little bit better on that background. Now, if that seems like it's splitting hairs, possibly. We've all seen people who kind of do something like this, though. And then it's like, oh, I mean, I can see that, but, you know, maybe it's not the best. So what I would do is I can just come to the accessibility checker. Yep, that's not dark enough. So let's just drag that downwards until this button lights up. There we go. And maybe that's an ugly color, so I'm going to make it a little bit darker green. And there we go. We have a clean bill of health for accessibility. So when you are using tables in Canvas, it's really common to use tables, particularly because formatting in Canvas is difficult. That said, a lot of accessibility experts will say, don't create a table just to help you format and lay out things on the page visually. So there's debate as to whether they need to be avoided at all costs versus simply used carefully and used sparingly. I would say if you can use it carefully and sparingly, if it's necessary to get everything on the page, then just make sure that you're following other good table principles that are on this slide, but that the reading order from left to right, top to bottom, makes sense with the stuff that you've put on the page, because that is the order in which it's going to be read. So if you have stuff that's meant to be read first, but it is on the right-hand side, then it's actually going to be read second, and that may or may not actually make any sense. So that's layout tables, but for even things like data tables, it's going to help you add the stuff that you need to add. So don't merge cells if you can, because I know that's really common for formatting purposes, but it makes it, imagine trying to navigate through a table that you can't see and trying to keep sense of, wait, am I in row 2, column 1? Am I in the grades column? Am I in the GPA column? You know, where in the table am I? Try to make sense of that when you have, you know, merged cells. It makes it very difficult. Don't nest tables inside of tables, and avoid leaving cells entirely blank if possible, because then again, it just kind of begs the question, like, okay, what is this table actually representing? So if I create a table very quickly in Canvas here, let's say that I'm going to tell people about their grades for this assignment. Like, what is a 4.0 on this assignment? I might lay that out in a data table. There's this table icon up here. I'm not going to go super in depth about how to use Canvas tables, because there's some really great articles on how to do that. But let's say that I'm going to give the GPA for this assignment, the percent, and the points required. So a 4.0 on this assignment is going to be 90%. So then 3.5 is, I think, what, an 85% to 89%. Not going to spend a bunch of time on this. 85 to 89 points. Okay. So again, what we want to avoid doing is merging cells. So let's say that sometimes people will do this and say, you know, points required in week 1, something like that, where they put the title inside the table itself. What I would say is don't do that, just leave that outside of the table and make it a heading. So I would say, in this case, heading 3, week 1 grades. That's going to be much more accessible than putting a title inside of your table. The second thing we're going to do is, I didn't leave any blank cells, I didn't merge anything. If I did need to merge these cells because this is showing maybe the same type of information, I would just repeat it. So I would say, like, you know, grade, oops, grade. Some, you know, if you do need to repeat yourself, that's totally fine, but don't merge those cells together. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Canvas accessibility checker, because there's a few hidden things that I can do in here to make this more accessible. And again, it's all just about putting extra code under the hood of our table. So I'm going to click on check accessibility. And it has noticed my table. So first thing, tables should have a caption. And this is actually going to place the table caption at the top, which is really great, because students are, if you're using a screen reader, you are moving from top to bottom most of the time. And so you want to encounter that caption before you encounter the table. The reason for that is, and what we're actually going to put in the caption, is that I can, as a sighted student, visually skim this table, right? I can just glance at it and know immediately GPA percent points. This table is going to tell me the points required for each letter grade on, or each GPA grade on my week 1 assignment. That is the information that I want to give to a student who is visually impaired, and that is because taking time to read each of these individual cells just to figure out what the table is about is going to take them an order of magnitude more time than it is to just read the caption, and then they can decide for themselves if they need to pursue this table cell by cell. So I'm going to say, you know, points required to earn each grade for assignment week 1, something like that. I could probably word that better, but you get the idea. I know when I encounter this caption that is what is going to be in the data table itself. So I applied that, and now I have one more thing that I need to do for this table, and that is to set a table header. Now, a table header, slightly different from a heading, is just, again, it's code that tells the screen reader, these are my column labels, and these are my row labels. Now, you may or may not have row headers. If this is just data, then perhaps this is not considered a row header. But if it is, if this is considered the title of this row, you can insert either just a header row, just a header column, or a header row and a header column. So what I'm going to say is I'm just going to do a header row, which is probably the most common. And boom, it has, for me, for my benefit, it has now turned this into a pretty title. It's bold, it's centered, it's done that formatting for me. If I did both, then boom, it would bold and center my header row and my header column. So that just visually tells users that these are labels for this row and this column. And when I do that, functionally what that does is if I use a screen reader, this will say GPA 4.0. And then I move over here and it'll say percent, 90% to 100%. And then I'll move over here and it says points required, 90 to 100. And so what it's going to do is it's going to repeat this title for me whenever I move into that column. And so that helps eliminate some of those struggles of like, wait, which column was I in again? Which if you have a very long and complex table, I mean, I have a terrible visual memory. I have a terrible time remembering where I am in a table if I can't see it from having tried using a screen reader myself. So I'm going to hit apply and boom, there we go. We now have a accessible table for students to use. Let's see. Okay, so we're almost there. The next thing I want to talk about is math. If you are blind or visually impaired and using a screen reader, math is very difficult because, again, like this slide says, 8 over 4 squared is what you hear, but does that mean 8 over 4 squared? Or does that mean 8 over 4 and all of that is squared? So what Canvas does is it injects a code that is called MathML. So if you use that math editor, it's going to create an image. And actually, I'm going to, here we go. So I have this page that I created once upon a time, and this is an equation that was generated from the Canvas equation editor. Now, this is only going to be accessible as long as it is within Canvas itself. So if you take this and put it into a Word document, for example, then all bets are off. It loses the code that is required to do this. If a student is using a screen reader, and they come across this, they can hit the enter key, which down here I have included instructions for a student that they could use to access this stuff. They can hit enter and it'll bring up this pop-up. And what the student can do is actually use the arrow keys to explore each section of the equation. And I'm gonna do a new share.
7 root of 5 over 2 squared.
So the movement, this turning red and then moving along the equation, that is controlled by the student using their arrow keys. So they know as they're moving where in the equation they're going.
Plus 4 left paren 8 over x right paren. 4 left paren 8 over x right paren. Left paren 8 over x. 8 numerator. X denominator.
So see how, like, amazingly that lets you drill down into the equation and it clarifies, like, hey, this is the numerator, this is the denominator. So you have a fraction, it's inside of parentheses, and so the person is allowed to explore and get their own visual sort of read of what the equation actually has. So that is, if you're starting to write equations that you're going to be sharing digitally, I would consider using this Canvas equation editor. It's this, or sorry, I keep calling it the equation editor. I think that's what it's called in Microsoft Word, which, by the way, the Microsoft Word equation editor is not nearly as accessible. So if you create a bunch of math in Word and then have a student who's visually impaired, that might cause a lot of frustration. And honestly, trying to convey math to students who are blind, just in general, is it's one of those pieces of technology that is not quite caught up yet. I actually spoke to someone from one of the accessibility companies who was doing a webinar, and he was doing a screen reader demonstration for DQ, I believe. And I asked him about accessible math, and he said, you know, he's not personally super familiar with that because when he was in school, he just couldn't take math classes, and he was a little regretful because he thinks that he might have enjoyed doing more math if he could only have accessed it. So if you're considering, you know, creating a bunch of digital math at this point, now that you're creating sort of new Canvas courses, you can click on this. And I don't know in depth how to use this equation editor because I have not written a whole lot of equations in my life. But basically you have these tabs and then it will let you insert these different elements, and then I can type in, I can fill in these boxes. Let's see, I want to do 8 over, I don't know, 4. I'm just picking numbers. And then when you hit insert, it creates an image of that equation with the ability to pull up that window using a screen reader and explore that equation in depth. So that is, I would recommend doing that, and just kind of, you can always take these images and and like move them into Microsoft Word or somewhere else if you need to. But if you have this Canvas page ready, and even if you just keep it hidden, then you have all of those accessible equations just ready and waiting for anyone who might end up needing them. And if you even share that with the rest of the department, then even better, because then you've just got, you've got all of those waiting. And remember that it is acceptable to create alternate assignments for your students. So if you have, for example, let's take something that's not just math related. If you're sending students to do an assignment in Cengage, for example, Cengage MindTap, Cengage SAM, those programs are probably not super accessible. To be honest, the fact that we are held legally responsible for that, which we are, if you require students to do something in SAM and they, we get federal funding, so we have to be for everybody. So you're requiring students to use something, even if you didn't build it, that thing has to be accessible. To be honest, that's really more, I believe, to put pressure on the publishers. If we demand to Cengage and to Pearson, I need a VPAT, I need you to provide a voluntary product accessibility template, that sends a message to them that that's something that they should spend money and time on, making this software accessible. Because as you've seen with like this accessibility checker here, the capability is there to make things really accessible and to make things really easy on you as the instructor. The capability is there. The software companies just need to kind of step up and start doing it, really. So in any case, it is acceptable to be planning ahead of time to have alternate assignments. So if you know you have a video that you can't add captions to it because it's not yours, and you didn't, it's a video from the publisher maybe, for example, and you use that, and now suddenly you have a student who is deaf or hard of hearing and can't complete the assignment, or you have a math assignment that you've just created, but you have a student who's blind and then they can't access that math. If you have an alternative assignment that meets the same learning objectives, that is okay, as far as I know. And so it's a good idea to just be thinking of those alternative assignments. That's why one of the discussion questions that you can pick for Module 5 is pick one of your activities, pick one of your assessments, and think about an alternative way that you could create that assessment for someone who can't access the assessment as it's written. So again, the idea here is not to reach 100% perfect accessibility. I don't believe there's any such thing to all students, but even just changing a couple things, even if you only pick one goal for yourself for next semester, pick one manageable goal. Avoid analysis paralysis, avoid the temptation to get overwhelmed and say, well, I'm never going to achieve all of it, so I'm not going to achieve any of it. Pick one goal, because even if you make your course 2% more accessible, 1%, 5%, for one particular student with one specific disability, that could mean 100% accessibility for them. And that could mean the difference between passing and failing. And yeah, so that is, I'm gonna show you what else is in this PowerPoint that I'm gonna send you. I've got some helpful Canvas accessibility resources, how to use the accessibility checker, which includes other things that it checks for. I didn't go over captions, but there is a way to upload caption files into your Canvas videos, and also some general accessibility design guidelines written by Instructure. For students, you can send them this accessibility within Canvas link, and it will tell them how to, supported screen readers and browsers for Canvas, special keyboard shortcuts that they might not know about otherwise if they have trouble using a mouse, how to access the more accessible view of things like the gradebook, calendar, dashboard, oops, misspelled dashboard there, and how to turn on special settings like high contrast or turning on underlined links. And perhaps you will take advantage of this as well. We all acquire a disability at some point in our lives for the most part. So, this is stuff that may be helpful for you as you're building your courses as well.
Molly?
Yeah.
So for those resources for students, like those articles, et cetera, that you just listed there, are those things that we can assume that a student with a disability will have access to, or are you saying that we need to provide that for them for each course?
Really good question. The more that you can provide things, the better. Now, in a perfect world, I'm going to go double check the Canvas student orientation that my office has built, and I'm going to find this link in there somewhere. I can't promise you that we've included this link in there. We really should have. Again, yeah, the more that you can provide instructional resources that include accessibility, it's kind of the same mentality that, like, if a student is taking a class online, they may not know that there is an office for student access where they can get accommodations for their disability. They may not know that there's a student success services office. They may not know that there's free tutoring, and they may not know that the free tutoring is something they can do at a distance online. Now, theoretically, in a perfect world, they got that during the student orientation, but students often to look to you guys as the experts, right? You guys know everything, and so they don't know that, you know, ignoring the fact that you might be an adjunct, this might be the only class that you're teaching here, that you might be teaching in 4 other places, and that's 4 different student success centers to remember, right? So the more that you can just kind of build this into your class and then just like forget about it. The good news is that with Canvas, a lot of these links, they get updated regularly. So if you are linking to things like the Canvas guides, that says, here's all the accessibility features in Canvas, Canvas is going to keep that up to date. So, and if that link breaks someday, then you can use the link validator tool in Canvas to check for broken links, and it'll tell you that this link is broken. But for the most part, Canvas is going to keep their articles up to date for you so that you don't have to worry about anything except making sure that it ends up in your course in the first place. Focus on new materials as you're creating them, and then go back and fix maybe like your course assignment schedule, because that's something you update every semester, hopefully, and that it's really the contract for your class, right? So it's sort of that one piece that students really do need to be able to access. Pick something that is relevant to you, that's interesting to you, that is something that you feel is an achievable goal for yourself. Because whatever is achievable for you, that's what I want you to do first. And that's all I've got. I've got links to the Poet Training Tool. This is a really cool website that teaches you how to write really good alternative text and long descriptions. So if you have a lot of diagrams, technically those need to have descriptions in text form, especially if you have an image-heavy class. So I would say that you don't have to do that without. It's also not something that you're necessarily like trained how to do unless you write technical diagrams, I guess. So that's why that is one of the options for the discussion questions as well. I've got a link to Headings Map, which is that Chrome extension that you can use to reveal headings on a web page as if it were in Microsoft Word. And yeah, we've got, I asked Gail to come to talk a little bit about stuff that you'll be doing for wrapping up the seminar as a whole. But I'm happy to take any questions, or she can take over for me.